With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
There's no right or wrong answer to it. It is completely dependent on what your heart tells you to be. There is a level of introspection that has to go into this, because if we're going to present ourselves to our program, 100, 200, 300, 400 people, whatever it might be, we better damn well know who we are from a foundational level. And you have to have that level of detail into knowing who you are, because you're going to be tested.
Today, we wrap up our Culture OS series with the host of the series, Rob Pomazak, the head coach at St. Charles North in Illinois. And we take a look back at some of the evolving patterns we see and things you need to think about in developing your own culture operating system. So, Rob, it's been a tremendous series. Again, I appreciate all the work you put into this and the insight that you were able to draw out of all of our guests.
Thanks, Keith. It was a great experience and something that I'm still learning from right now.
What you see on tape is a direct reflection of what you teach and how you teach. Video is important, but if you don't teach well, you're not going to like what you see on your video. First Down Playbook has been helping coaches teach better for 13 years. It allows you to present installs, playbooks, and practice cards in half the time with NFL quality. Coaching tools like video pairing, a player app, practice schedules, and wristband sheets have made First Down Playbook a program management system with everything in one place. If you're in a position of leadership with your football program, receive a free 1-week look at First Down Playbook. Call them at 512-814-6158 or visit them on their website or social media. Mention Coach and Coordinator Podcast or use the coupon code COACH24 to receive a $100 discount off the normal $700 First Down Playbook team membership price. Links and the phone number are in the show notes. When we look at this, one of the first questions you ask is mission, vision, and purpose. What's your mission, vision, and purpose? And I think that's where all of this starts. When you're putting together a culture operating system, as we called it, you have to have those things in place. Those are the things that, used correctly, will be the strategic driver of everything else.
No question about it. When you're first starting out, you're going to need creating the program that you envision. And I think one of the main goals of this podcast was to get people thinking about the intent and the design to go into building the program that you want to build. Coach, or as a leader, this is your opportunity to really build something in the ideology that you want it to be. So when we look at the mission, vision, and purpose, I think it's important to kind of define what those are. From the mission standpoint, it's really your day-to-day, the microscopic view. What are we going to be doing today, daily, that's going to be accomplished, that's going to eventually get us to what maybe that vision is, or that long-term scope, that long-term goal. So when I'm explaining this to my staff or other coaches, we talk about mission being the microscopic view, the day-to-day. We talk about that vision being the telescopic view of where do you want to go. And then the underlying aspect of it is the purpose. Like, what is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And that's a question that a lot of people get stumped on, because when we really have to sit and think about our why, does your purpose align with your mission, which aligns with your vision? And I think the one thing that we can take from all of these podcasts is that the gentleman that we talked to certainly had a detailed level of all three. And we then pull from that and kind of see what are those common threads. And if you're just starting out as a head coach, or even if you're in year 25 and you're looking to get better, it's never too late to start to define that program a little bit more.
In looking at this, you went back and pulled out some really memorable clips that highlight some of these ideas. And the first one that you pulled out was with Matt Drinkall at Army.
Matt gave a ton of good information, but the one that really stood out to me was his mission was clearly defined from a staff standpoint. Now, we have to understand that there's going to be multiple prongs to every mission. You know, every different entity, stakeholder program, you have to have a mission for them. But his mission for his staff was to create an experience that is quality of life that cannot be compensated in any way, shape, or form from a standpoint of looking elsewhere. He wants to create an experience for his staff daily. His day-to-day mission is to create something that they can go home and feel great about, that gives them not only the football aspect, but also gives them the family security that maybe they need. And his discipline to stay the course with that and being able to give that experience on a day-to-day basis was a really great highlight of what a mission can be. Because when you wake up in the morning and you start looking at the different systems of your program and you're like, what is the mission I'm creating today for my staff? It's a really good spot to start when it comes down with their experience. Too often we focus on the player's experience, which is obviously paramount, but we also have to look at the staff's as much time, just as much effort, if not more. And we want to make sure we're taking care of those men and women within our program as well.
It's definitely an impactful clip here. Let's take a listen to what Coach Drinkall had to say.
To me, the biggest thing is and I wasn't perfect. I had to let guys go sometimes and stuff, and that's not great. But to me, it's I think it's a very simple deal. I got all this leadership BS and all this management advice and all. Dude, if there's any environment where someone can't tell someone else the truth, that ain't good. You know what I mean? I told my staff, I'm like, I will have plenty of ideas. Your guys' jobs are to stop me from doing all of the dumb ones, which will be most of them. If I have a stupid idea and then I do it and I find out you guys knew it was stupid, now I'm going to be pissed. You know, so to me, it's you have to have this environment where between, and you got to have some social savvy, you know what I mean? As a from a managerial standpoint, but can everyone be honest with each other? If maybe somebody's complaining about something I'm doing. Well, if I can't trust someone on staff to get that person in line and aligned with us right away, you know what I mean? That environment and that culture has to exist.
So the next clip you've pulled out here and the coach you focused on is Derek Leonard, who's done an incredible job at Rochester High School, multiple state championships, and really a focus on building the scope.
Yeah, Derek has won 9 state championships, and the aspects that I truly enjoyed about our conversation was not so much the 9 state championships, but the years prior to that, where they were working towards that ultimate vision of being a state championship football program. And then once they achieved it, how his vision changed. And it now came to, how do we keep that momentum going? How do we keep that consistent level of success? And his vision for his program was creating a long-term scope midway through the year, week 6, week 7, week 8, checking in with his players, having that talk about what it's going to look like in week 14 on Thanksgiving, and encouraging them to have that mental and physical endurance to get to that point, not looking back at what other teams have done in the past, but really keeping that vision specific to that team at that moment and what it's going to take to get to the promised land, get deep into the playoffs. He also talked about his personal vision as a coach of having people in the room that he feels like are smarter than him. I thought a very astute and vulnerable statement from his standpoint. He's probably one of the finest offensive minds in the country when it comes to high school football in any regard, but talking about surrounding himself in his mind's eye with people who are smarter than him so that they can see things that maybe he doesn't. We often talk about vision on what we see as the head coaches, but we often need to ask the question of, what are my vision blind spots? What don't I see? And can I bring people into that conversation who maybe see things that I'm missing? I think that's a huge attribute to all of their success, is that he has people within his program that are seeing the program from 365 degrees that allow them to build that scope and sequence in unison.
Well, let's take a listen to the man himself here, Derek Leonard, talking about building that scope.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I have that same problem with some kids, especially the kids that don't play, the JV kids, right? And that is that is tough. And always how I try to treat the year is we'll usually get to week 6, 7, something like that, and kind of make that the midpoint of the year. Sometimes give a day off. Maybe we play a team that's not as good, or maybe we're going to play a team we know we're going to get killed by anyways. We all have games like that, right? But finding that midpoint, almost giving them a breather, talking about that being the midpoint. And that midpoint really is, okay, if it's week 6 or 7, hey, that means 14, 12, right? Which is the state championship. And so we really think in that pattern of not so much it being week 4 or 5 of a 10-week or a 9-week season, but 7-week and 14, and just how they, and I think there are times to give some days off and loosen up the reins a little bit, and especially in that middle part where things do become a grind. And I don't care if you're winning or losing. Mm-hmm. There's times in that middle, we've all been there, at that, whether it's real hot, it's 5 o'clock, you're like, gosh, I got to get home. This is awful. And then, if you're thinking it, the kids are thinking it. And
they were thinking about an hour before you were thinking it.
Yes. And so it's so natural. And so just finding ways as a coach or doing fun things kind of in that middle and all the time. Right. And I'll be honest, there's games where, man, we know we're going to win. Mm-hmm. Right. Or like I said, there's games, you're going to lose. And we'll do different things those weeks, right? We'll kind of take a different approach. And sometimes it's as easy as giving a day off or going light, or, man, getting ice cream at practice or something silly, and it's amazing what those things do for a kid's psyche and how they think about things. And because I always use this as an example. I said, hey, when you're dealing with 15, 16, 17, and let alone coaches and assistant coaches, right? I remember when my dad would say, oh, we're going to do this old Cyclone mile it was, right? You had to run a mile in a certain time. It ruined my whole practice. It didn't matter what we did, what practice did. All I was thinking about is I so do not want to run that. And I always tell our coaches that was one thing I never, now I think I'm a genius because now you kind of got this feed the cats thing where no one conditions afterwards. And I've been doing that for 19 years. And part of it is because of the no huddle, and it was like, man, we're going to practice hard during things. But I always thought, man, the kids, I just hated that. And so, but I use that in that, man, these kids, the little things, man, whether school's tough, girlfriend dumped them, man, it's a grind. We were getting beat up. I mean, those kids, it's natural. And it doesn't matter if you're winning or losing. And how do you break it up as a coach? And you kind of got to be able to read the room a little bit and change things up and do things differently, right? They're high school kids and they're not college kids. College, hey, I get it. It's a business. And even there, I would do some fun things, but these are high school kids with daily lives of struggle sometime. And so you gotta, but man, how the big thing, like to get back to your question a little bit, I'm rambling, but
that's great.
Kind of that 14 week, right? We kind of look at everything as a 14, 13 week system. And so that middle point usually, hey, week 7, week 6, somewhere in there. So
the last clip we have in this section has to deal with purpose. And that's something that you pulled from your conversation with Anthony Shiffman.
Yeah, Anthony really highlighted the person over player philosophy, and Coach Golesh did the same thing. But I chose Anthony on this particular one because he's coming into a new program at the high school level, a program that had previous success. And how do you not look at that previous success as something you have to live up to? You do that by focusing on the players and the moment that you have with them. And he talked about leading with his authentic self. He doesn't need to be somebody else. A lot of times as head coaches or assistant coaches, we try to be what we think we're supposed to be, or maybe how we were coached. And we have to truly lead from our heart. We have to be leaders that are able to bring their thoughts to the forefront and not what we just see on clinics. I think it was really important that he touched on that connection that you need to make with your players even when connection is hard. Anthony talked about he's currently a substitute within the building. He doesn't see his players every day, but finding those moments to connect is essential. And if we look at our day-to-day operations with our players, we have those moments with them. We just have to seek them out, even if it's walking past them in a hall, or if you have them in a class, or maybe you're just doing a one-on-one meeting. If you can connect with your players and find out who is underneath that mask, it's going to take that program a little bit further, in my opinion.
Let's take a listen to what Coach Shiffman had to say.
You want to connect with kids. You want to build relationships first, and you want to make sure that those kids understand that you have their best interests at heart. And, when it all gets down to it, when you kind of boil it down and get down to the real nitty gritty of it, we want to make great young men. We want to send our boys, and we actually had a couple female managers this year too, so I'm going to include them in that. We want to send our students off to being great people in life. I was just having a conversation with a young man yesterday about football, and I told him I don't really care what you do out there. I care about what you do here and in your future. And so that's been sort of a lesson that's been instilled in me since day one is just making sure that we're creating great human beings and great people. And if we can do that and we can get that day to day out of them and get that mindset out of them, the on the field stuff's going to be easy, in my opinion. So that's the real big thing for me, kind of away from football, is just making sure that they're growing up to be, people of high character and people that stay in their community and people that are proud of what they've done in their community, whether it's on the field or off the field. And those are kind of the real big pieces for me in regards to all of that. So, I know that's kind of a long-winded answer for it, but like I said, when you kind of boil it down, it's just making sure that they're doing right and that they're becoming good people.
As coaches, we know that some of the biggest hurdles to our team's success can come from off the field. Your team needs support to tackle the endless list of expenses, uniforms, training equipment, travel, and more. But raising that money can feel like a full-time job. Thankfully, there's Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise is the premier online fundraising platform using innovative technology to create the easiest and most efficient system available. Raise more money in less time with a local fundraising coach who works with your team every step of the way to customize the ideal fundraiser. With options for online donations, digital discount cards, premium product sales, and even spirit shops, Vertical Raise has top-of-the-line solutions for every fundraising style. To find out more, visit verticalraise.com and we'll get you connected with an exclusive offer on your first fundraiser. In looking at this next section that you've put together here, the common thread is trust, and it's essential for a culture to work. It may be the key for any culture to work is trust, and that's all of these coaches talked about. What were the things that you really took away from these ideas that these guys shared on trust?
Trust is, like you said, that pivotal ingredient to the recipe of success. And without it, you can't go very far. But when you have it, it can supersede some deficiencies that maybe the program has. And I started off with Brad Spencer, the head coach at North Central College. He gave us this great idea of the horizon line. And when I look at trust, I usually talk about it in three different dimensions. I talk about the connection, the competency level, but then also the character. And focusing on the connection aspect with Brad, he made a great point that you have to be the same person for your players every day. They should not walk onto the field and not know what they're going to get or what version of their coach they're going to get. And Brad shows you that not only in high pressure situations, but he shows you that in the practice field. He shows you that in the office room. You know exactly the person that you're going to get, which allows players, staff, anybody who comes into contact with that program to really maximize their true potential, because there's a connection with the leader. Oftentimes as leaders, we carry out our day, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, out to the practice field, or maybe our personal life gets interjected into it. This was something from a connection standpoint that I took to heart, because you can build trust for 3 years, and one bad experience or one bad connection point is going to really hurt it, and you may never get it back. So Brad talks about that being the horizon line and his own personal operating system of how he operates best.
Let's take a listen to the head coach of North Central College, Brad Spencer, on connection and trust.
I mean, I appreciate that, Rob, and I'll, go back to one of my early years coaching. I think Jeff was the offensive coordinator at the time, and his dad was the head coach, and we were having an offensive staff meeting, and Jeff just kind of reassured all of us, like, hey, you've got to coach how you coach. You don't need to try and coach how I do or anybody else does. I thought that was good affirmation at the time to just be who you are. Every coach is going to coach different. When I took over, readily said, like, I'm not trying to be John Thorne. I'm not trying to be Jeff Thorne. I'm not trying to be Nick Saban. I've got to do this how I do it. I mean, if you watch Hard Knocks, you can see Coach McDaniels of the Dolphins. He's very much unapologetically himself, and that works for him. It's not going to work for the next guy or the next guy, just like how I am, works for me. I think the advantage of it is it does allow your players to know where you're going to be at. They know how I'm going to be and what they can expect. I think also, it's funny because recruits' families will ask, what's your style of coaching? How do you coach? And, they can ask our players, and, eventually kind of that'll get back to me what they say, and one of them had said something to the effect of, yeah, he's calm like this most of the time. And if he's not, something's wrong and we need to fix it right away. And I guess that's just my style of coaching, whether it's been like that since I've been a receivers coach. I think as you grow as a coach, you obviously become more confident to use your voice in different ways when you need to, but for me, I think I know I operate best if my demeanor is a more flat one. And I part of that was learned, as an offensive coordinator, when you're in the press box, you're away from all the craziness, the madness, the yelling. You can always take your headset off and don't hear anything. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what I needed to do, but, when you're up there, you can, have your notes, you have everything in front of you, and you can just learn how to slowly manipulate or go about your process of play calling and breaking down a defense. And so I think part of it comes from that, just spending so many years, most of my years as a coach here at North Central were spent in the press box. I always say we're a product of our surrounding, when I'm talking about, our players and where they come from. Some kids have like 4 varsity coaches. Some have a position coach at every position. So they're all a product of that, just like I'm going to be a product of, my coaching background, and I get jokes about it. One of our alums sent me, there was an article written after we won the national title in 2022. And our running back, Ethan Greenfield, had a long run down the sideline. I think he's running over a defensive back at Mount Union during it. And you kind of see everybody going crazy. And I'm kind of like in the background holding my play call sheet, just calmly watching it. And, he edited the photo and circled it in the text. He put typical Spencer here, and so, yeah, I guess that's how I am. But I think, maybe the calmness on the outside doesn't really reflect the drive or the passion, determination, that's inside to win and win at the highest level. I think one thing I found out going to, previous national titles is once you go, it's always harder to get back and to stay at that level. But I think your drive to be at that level becomes even greater. You almost become obsessed with it. So I think for me, I try and put that energy and excitement and enthusiasm at prepping our coaches, prepping our team, practice planning and game planning. That's kind of where, I put all my energies and excitement. And then, as a head coach, obviously you're going to have times talking with your team that you need to be able to, quote, be on. And so, I save the hollering for those moments when you really need to get the attention of the team, in practice and during games. I like to have fun with the guys and joke with them, put my arm around them, try and keep them positive, keep them up, because I want our players to operate in an atmosphere where they feel comfortable to take risks, to try and make plays, to play above themselves. And if I'm going to get them to do that, then I need to create that atmosphere myself where they feel comfortable to do that. If I say I want them to do that, but then I'm not acting in a way that's creating that atmosphere, it's going to be very hard for them to do that if they feel, constrained or handcuffed or worried.
Next, we have Kyle Ralph, head coach at New Palestine High School in Indiana. Very memorable conversation with Coach Ralph, and I thought some moments of vulnerability where he had to admit some of the things going through his head as he was making this long commute every day and really learning about his team and figuring out, I think in some ways, where does this all sit with me? How do I make all of this work? So what did you find in this conversation about trust with Coach Ralph?
With Coach Ralph, I really honed in on that second aspect of the trust paradigm, where the competency level. Obviously, everywhere he's been, whether it was high school, collegiately, and now at New Palestine, he brings a level of competency that elevates everybody around them. But one of the things he mentioned was he wanted his team to be the most excited team on a Friday night. And we kind of glanced over it, and I've listened through it a few times. I think so often we talk about culture and the operating systems being away from the field, but you truly have to bring something to make your play four-dimensional. As a head coach personally, I talk with our players about how is that person in the last seat in the stands going to feel watching you play? If they couldn't hear anything, if they just could watch you, how are they going to feel? Are they going to feel your excitement, your passion, your aggressiveness? That's something that Coach talked about as being excited to play the game on a Friday night. He also alluded to the level of preparation and our personal competency at our skill sets are going to allow us to play as the most excited team. We all know that if we're not confident, we're thinking a lot, it slows us down. Thought it was a great way to dovetail what we do off the field and on the practice field and bring it to the show on a Friday. What a great piece of advice for all of us to take away.
Let's take a listen here to what Coach Ralph has to say.
Yeah, that's, again, one of the harder parts. Every year is so vastly different. I think the goals are different. The ceiling is different. The basement is different. Every year just has its own complete identity. To me, the one thing that we're big on is the standard here is the standard. Like, we're never going to lower the bar for anybody, regardless. The expectation is that you're going to be at weightlifting, you're going to give your best, you're going to be at the conditioning stuff, you're going to be at Dawn Patrol, you'll be there for the, summer practices, you're going to, all the things that, you're going to be respectful in the classroom, you're going to be great out in the community, you're going to treat people the right way. All that stuff is not negotiable. We're never going to lower that bar ever. So again, kind of that core piece of the program, that's not changing. And so every year, regardless of what year you are, how old you are, how many games you've played in, that's coming. That's just how things are. The thing that changes, though, is obviously your depth, your talent, experience, and then everything else has to start kind of branching off from that as you make a vision for what this team is, what they're going to be, who might be able to play what those kids are going to need, how you push them enough where they can actually rise and grow and not kind of wither and fall. Every kid's so different. I think that's a good thing of what we do is getting to know the kids, how to talk to them. Every kid's so vastly different. And we're not in a huge community here. Our school's 1,200 kids. It's not a big place. So, our school's probably big for the area that we're in, actually, just because we draw a lot of people in our county and stuff. But it's really not a large community or a large town. So we're like everybody else, though. You're going to have kids on this end of the spectrum that are, maybe from a wealthy family in a great area with $1 million home. And you're going to have people on this side of the spectrum who, he maybe hasn't eaten in the last 24 to 36 hours and doesn't have food on the table and hasn't been able to get a ride to practices or school. And you've got to find a way to get all that and in between to function together. So, get to know your kids and build those relationships up, understanding, how you can push different kids and sometimes what they need to hear and what they don't need to hear. That, as a head coach and an assistant coach, is insanely difficult. Mm-hmm. So I think that's also a little bit of the fun that keeps it exciting for me is, like, right now we're going to max out next week at the end of our first offseason cycle. You can feel the energy. And I was telling one of our assistants today, like, we're really off to a great start this offseason. We bring back almost our entire team. We bring back, I think 8 starters or more on each side of the ball, essentially. A lot of those guys are really young. They can kind of feel that momentum building. And so now it's like last year it was more of, we just have to get these young kids confident so they can function and just have some success, because we started 9 to 10 sophomores and a freshman last year at some points. So the offseason, the drive, the push, it was not anything like what we're doing this year, because last year was build confidence, build them up physically, build them up mentally. Let's get them in a position to be successful. Let's not overload them, and we weren't soft on them or anything, but like, it was a totally different spectrum of need than what we have this year. Most of our team played for us last year. They're going to be very experienced and veteran, though they're still young kids. They know what to expect. And so now you can start to really drive them as you've built that relationship up and you know how they operate because you watched them play 14 games this year. You can really take that to a totally different level that last year we would not have ever approached. So, yeah, every year is different. And I think that's a big part of coaching is figuring that out. And then once you find the button, push it.
We finished up today hearing from Coach Alex Golesh, head coach at University of South Florida. Definitely an impactful episode. I know I pulled clips of this and shared it with multiple people. He said so many good things, but for you, what was it you focused on here on the trust side?
Coach Golesh is a character-driven person. His insight into the accountability that he holds it to the elite level of everything in the program was something that I found to be very interesting as a head football coach and a leader. But his approach to how he handles his players, and obviously he is a players-driven coach. It's his foundational element to everything they do. All questions lead back to, is this what's best for the players? But then he also talked about the process that each player has to go through. And are you who you say you are? So when we talk about that trust paradigm and we look at character, are you who you say you are? If you say that you're going to be the best coach, positional coach in our program, is your day-to-day work, your mission equating to that vision that you have? From a player standpoint, are you the person that you say you are and off the field, in the classroom, on the field, in the film room? All of those things seem to be answered when we ask one simple question. And it's something that I took a note on, and it's going to be my lead-in question with my players in our one-on-one meetings throughout the summer. Are you being the person who you say you are being? And that's something we all can look at from a leadership standpoint. We can also turn that mirror onto ourselves. And are we as head coaches and leaders being the person that we say we're going to be? Sometimes it's not equal, or maybe it doesn't match. Then you have to look at what you're doing from a leadership standpoint. Are we going to switch who we say we are, or are we going to switch what we're doing? Just a tremendous amount of insight within that 50 minutes.
Let's take a listen here to Coach Golesh on Be Who You Say You Are.
And we talk about establishing winning culture, but what that actually looks like is, what is my day-to-day process look like? And starting with accountability to your teammates, starting with trust within the program. And I think trust goes 4 ways. That's player to player first. Like, if that trust isn't there, nothing can ever be achieved. But the coach to coach trust, the players see all of it. They know. And then the coach to player and the player to coach. At the end of the day, the player to coach is so, so important that they trust their coach. That's why I'm not a big slogan guy or motto guy or wristbands or signage all over the place. We have one, I guess, slogan you could say or motto, and that's just be who you say you are. And to me, that kind of encompasses the trust factor. Just do what you say you're going to do, man. Like at the end of the day, be whatever you say you are, man. I want to be the best wide receiver in the country. Awesome. I'm going to give you every tool imaginable to do that. I'm going to try to get your process so perfect that you can do that. And then if you are, awesome. If you're not, let's reevaluate the process. And so I think when you become process driven as a program, you can truly evaluate every single aspect of it. And you can look at it very big picture and say, man, like we say we want to be tempo offense. How do we practice it? How's the weight room allow for your offense to be tempo? Do we train that way? Well, we know our skill guys are basically running a marathon every Saturday. Do we train that way? Do we eat that way? Do we make sure we're hydrated? Are we sleeping enough? Like all of these things that go into what a process looks like. And we could have a 45-minute conversation on just what a day looks like. But we came in and attacked the process in year one. And I said, I don't care about wins and losses. I don't care what people outside of here think. All we care about is our process in the weight room, process in how we feed our guys, our process as a staff and what the functional parts of our day look like. Can we be really efficient so we can get away from here for a minute? And then what does the process of recruiting look like? The evaluation, the actual recruiting, when a kid gets here on campus, all of like every single part of our program. Like I spent my first year just establishing process in every single aspect of what we do. And same thing with our players. And I think when you attack process daily, you don't worry about the end result because you don't control it. And so literally now going into year two, it's still, man, our process was this a year ago. Now we actually have something sustainable that we can say, man, this is how it was. Is there a way to do it better?
Rob, definitely an impactful set of clips that we've pulled together here from our episodes. And I think this has really become a great resource for coaches. I don't care if you're a head coach right now, a position coach, a coordinator. There's so much to take away from here in being able to serve others and be a leader and put something together that matters for your group, no matter how big that group is, whether that's position or the whole team. For you, in looking at this entire series, what would you recommend for coaches as they sit down and reflect on all the things that were shared here and where they can take this and go next?
The first place I would love for people to start is just getting to know yourself as a leader and as a person and where you want to lead from. There's no right or wrong answer to it. It is completely dependent on what your heart tells you to be. There is a level of introspection that has to go into this, because if we're going to present ourselves to our program, 100, 200, 300, 400 people, whatever it might be, we better damn well know who we are from a foundational level. And you have to have that level of detail into knowing who you are, because you're going to be tested. No matter what you put together, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to be tested in the way that you lead. You're going to be tested through adversity, and you're going to have something to fall back on. So this has to be something that you are willing to die on a hill for. And then the next thing is, it's never too late to start. Start with being very intentful in the direction you want to bring your program. Have that vision of where you see them going, and then work backwards. How do we get to X, Y, Z if that's the goal? Let's talk about what it starts today and then tomorrow. And then you start creating these day-to-day plans that you can see the growth. And we always talk about that Kaizen approach of that 1% incremental growth if we are all doing our part. And then you have to be able to present it. It's got to be clear. it's got to be concise, and it's got to be consistent. These aren't things that you're going to have a long time to talk about, right? Like there's very few opportunities for long form discussion like this great podcast that you created. But we have to be able to give that elevator pitch to every single stakeholder within our program within a minute or two, because that might be the only chance you get. And you want to leave them with something that makes them feel good.
Rob, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you took the time out of your busy off season to help put this together, to share with coaches, hopefully make a difference for somebody out there in what they're doing and what they're building in their own career and their community and their programs. Again, excellent job on this, and I look forward to having you back and do more of this next off season.
Keith, I'm the one who should be thanking you. That the platform that you have created has helped me exponentially as a coach to get where I'm at right now. As a 12-year head football coach, it would not be possible without the resources that you have created. The Coach and Coordinator podcast has been the consistent aspect of my development from start to finish and carrying forward now. So thank you for allowing me to do this, and thanks for all that you do for our coaching community.
Appreciate the kind words, Rob.
Thanks, bud.